So we're going to look now at transportation advocacy today. Public transit is our most affordable, integrated option. But we're looking at this picture, and public transit is not available everywhere. So Frankie's not with us today. But he says, you want to read it?
One of the biggest issues that people with a disability face is transportation. Like everyone else, we enjoy a night out once in a while, but this can be a problem, especially for people who use a wheelchair that doesn't fold or collapse, because we can only be transported in an accessible van or bus. I would love to be able to get on the bus and go somewhere, but there is no public transportation where I live, and this is a big problem. If you live in the city and you want to go shopping or to the movies, you can call Tank and request an accessible bus. But out here in the country, there is no public transportation.
So Frankie tells us that because he lives in a rural area, he's 20 minutes outside of the closest public transit system. This is a problem that folks all over Kentucky face. And I'm sharing with you some data on Kentucky's state transportation budget and how that breaks down. And you can see that new roads are 43% of the budget. Road maintenance is 17%. Bridge maintenance is 15%. Bridge expansion is 10%. Guardrails and signs and other safety projects are 6%. Consulting fees and studies are 4%. Bikes and pedestrian projects are 3% of the state transportation budget. And the lowest on the list is public transportation, and that's 2% of the state's transportation budget. So you can see the option that's the most affordable, the most integrated, and the most accessible is also right now at the bottom of the list. So if you want to advocate for public transit, here's some suggestions. You live in an area where you have the most knowledge and expertise. You need to know your public transit options where you are. Everybody needs to start where they are and look at what public transportation options you have in your community. I know a lot of participants that are listening, you may not have a disability, or you may not have a disability that affects your ability to drive or get around. But someday you might. And we each should know what that looks like in our community. And we need to know what the limitations are. Are there very few bus routes? Maybe it only runs between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. If you're working an evening shift, if the job that you're looking for is only going to hire folks in the evening, you're not going to be able to get back and forth to work. If the bus routes don't go across the community, you're going to be very limited where you can live, where you can shop, where you can work, and what relatives you can visit or what friends you can have. You may live in a community where there's no public transit at all. And what do? Do you either become homebound or do you move and leave your home? So it's important to know what's available in your community and attend public transportation meetings and those community action partnership meetings. Those meetings are held in communities quarterly, and those make decisions on what the state transportation budget funds in terms of public transportation. You can also talk to your local and state representatives and advocate for public transit. Here's an example of this in action. In Montgomery County, which is my hometown, we did not have public transportation many, many years. And a good friend of mine in Montgomery County, she's a person in a wheelchair that was unable to drive, no public transit. She would go to the grocery store once every 2 months, 3 months, when she had an accessible ride, and she would buy all of her milk and bread and freeze it, because she would only be able to get to the grocery store once every couple months because of a lack of accessible transportation. So there was a lot of advocacy that started building in Montgomery County, and folks started joining together and advocating for public transit. And in July of this year, despite the COVID pandemic, despite budget constraints, Montgomery County was able to start a public transit service. And it's an accessible van, and they'll take you to the grocery store, to the pharmacy, to work, to visit friends, whatever destination you want. And the trips are $1 per trip. So not only is it accessible, it's affordable. This is the kind of model that we want to see everywhere, so that folks are able to really participate and live in communities. So there's an organization called the Kentucky Public Transit Association, and they are basically the lobbying group for public transit in Kentucky. And they have a website. If you're interested in looking that up, I've provided that information for you. As Frankie told us, 20 minutes away from public transit, that distance is all that keeps him from being truly independent. And so Frankie has been working on a nonprofit organization called Mobility for People with Disabilities. And so Frankie's trying to form this nonprofit in order to advocate and try to create rural transportation options. So if anybody out there is interested in joining this advocacy effort, we are creating this nonprofit, and you are very welcome to join Frankie. I'll put the information for my email and my contact at the end of the slide, at the end of the presentation, and please reach out to me if you're interested in joining this. I've also provided Frankie's email address if you would like to reach out to Frankie to join. So now we're going to shift gears and talk about what accessible transportation options are currently available across Kentucky. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is public transit. Kentucky has 3 really large urban transit systems. Those are TARC in Louisville, TANK in Northern Kentucky, and Lextran in Lexington. Now, I want to tell you something very interesting about TARC in Louisville. So you're looking at a photo of Louisville, and you can see the bridge, and some of the routes go into Indiana. So some of Louisville's public transit routes also go a little bit into Indiana. You may not know that TARC receives more funding from the state of Indiana than they receive from the state of Kentucky. So Louisville's public transit system receives more funding from Indiana than they receive from Kentucky. Why is that? We also have 6 urban systems for public transportation. And you can see those public transit systems in Ashland, Owensboro, Bowling Green, Elizabethtown, and Henderson. So if you're a person with a disability that's not able to drive yourself, these are your locations. These are the places where you're going to have independence and accessibility. There are also 26 suburban and rural systems, so smaller community systems, like the one I showed you in Montgomery County. The system that we have, as limited as it is, still provides more than 30 million rides each year. Now, these are some nice features of public transit. If you work at one of Kentucky's universities, there's a ride-free option where if you're a student, if you're a faculty, or a staff person, even if you're the janitor at a public institution, you're able to get that ride-free pass and use public transit for free. And that's not just to go to work. That's also to go to the grocery store or go visit friends or whatever you want to do. Many of the transit systems also have veterans ride-free programs. You'll see this in Georgetown, in Nicholasville, in Danville, for example. There are student ride-free programs. In Fayette County, I've put a picture. If you have that student library card, you can show that library card and get on LexTran for free. This is really important that our young people start to learn how to use public transportation. There's also a program called Uplift, and this provides free transportation to those living in emergency shelters or transitional housing. So one problem a lot of folks have is that they don't live close to a bus stop. And if you're not close to a bus stop and you have difficulty walking very far, if you have a medical condition where you get tired and you have difficulty getting to that bus stop, you can do something called a route deviation. And what this means is you call the city bus, the public bus, 24 hours in advance. And they can go about a mile, sometimes it's more, off their route to pick you up door to door. So because this is something that's off the route, you do have to call in advance to schedule it. But this is something that's available for anybody, for people with and without disabilities. So Georgetown, they advertise this, and you can see they have a lady saying, the nearest bus stop is too far to walk, but G-Tran will pick me up at my house. This is called a route deviation, and it needs 24-hour notice. But this is a really important option for a lot of folks. They're going to have difficulty getting to that bus stop. Another service is county-to-county transportation. We don't have enough of this. We really need more county-to-county connecting smaller counties to bigger counties for employment, for healthcare, for people to get to entertainment or advocacy events. The Just Lex connection connects Nicholasville with Lexington. A lot of folks have lived in Lexington their whole lives and they don't know about this service. But it's a $5 round trip, and it's going to take you from Nicholasville into Lexington. It's important to know what's available in your area. And if there are things that don't exist in your area, are you advocating for it? Here's how you find out what's in your area. The Kentucky Transportation Cabinet has a website, and I'll show you the link on the next slide. And on the website, they have a directory of all the public transportation providers in Kentucky. You can sort it by county, and then it will list the names of all the registered public transit providers, the services they offer, and you can see intercity, demand response. It'll list the fare and the website. This link is about 40 pages. So if you go to this website, be sure to look down at the bottom and it'll have numbers, and you can click through all 40 plus pages of the public transportation providers. And that website is on Kentucky's Office of Transportation Deliveries page. You also need to know your community action partner. So who are the community action partners? These are regional organizations that receive federal, state, and local funds to carry out social services work in Kentucky counties. So each county in Kentucky, through these community action partnerships, must provide community transportation. So these agencies serve a multi-county area, and they're there to meet the public's needs. Now, Kentucky River Foothills is a good example. They have a website. You can look at it and see their transportation options. They show their services, which include transportation from Powell County into the Lexington Airport, if you need transportation to the Lexington Airport. They have their bus schedule, and they have photos of their transportation team members. Kentucky River Foothills covers Clark, Estill, Madison, and Powell counties. So they are that community action program for those communities. Each county has a community action partner. And if you go out and you compare the different areas, you'll see some are offering really robust transportation options, and some don't mention transportation at all on their website. So if you live in one of those communities, you really need to know what yours offers. And you want to compare to the neighboring areas and see if you're missing out on something that other communities are benefiting from. The community action partnerships and the transportation cabinet, they have meetings to determine what services gets priority. And so it's important if you live in an area where there are not transportation services. And I know a lot of folks out there listening are frustrated at the lack of transportation options where you are. This is how you go about creating change. You attend those meetings and you talk about the needs in your community. You can show what other communities have and how folks there are benefiting from it. Montgomery County created a service because folks demonstrated there was a need, a long-standing need, and folks organized and they got this service created. And this is through their community action partnership. So I'm a parent, and my son is like the most important thing to me in the world. And this is a photo of Grayson and his service dog, Skip. Like many parents, safety is something that's on my mind. I would be lying if I said that I didn't. But I'm lucky that I have my friend Arthur, because he told me this. Misguided love and protectionism is one of the most difficult obstacles that individuals with severe disabilities have to overcome. In fact, from the dawn of time down to this very moment, this misguided love and protectionism has been one of the main excuses that society has used to rob the vast majority of persons with severe disabilities from pursuing goals that able-bodied people take for granted as their birthright. So what are some ways that parents that are concerned about safety or concerned about building independence? I want to share a few with you. Public transit apps. Through a federal grant, Kentucky has been putting app technology in place across all of the public transit systems, no matter how rural. These are sensors that are added to the buses and an app that you're able to download for free. So I've been working with my son to learn to use public transit, and we're doing it through an app. And it helps because if you have trouble navigating where you are or how to get somewhere, or if you have trouble when the bus isn't on time and you're not really sure what to do next, these apps can help. You can see this picture is from my app, and the blue dot is where I am, and the lines are the bus route. And each of those gray dots are a bus stop. So you can see how close I am in the picture to a bus stop. You can watch the bus moving along the route coming to you. So if you're unsure or you're nervous about where the bus is, you can see the bus as it's coming to you. And that can help people with executive function kind of know what's coming next. You can also set up late bus alerts. So if the bus is going to be 5 minutes late, it's got that yellow around the bus. It's telling you that it's running late, and you can see where it is. The apps also let you set notifications. So I have on my son's phone set up, the bus will make an alert 10 minutes before the bus is set to arrive. You can be alerted by text or email. You can also put a parent or a caregiver or a support person's phone number in there so they can also get the alerts. Another great service is called travel training. And travel training helps riders develop those bus skills and gain independence. So they'll sit down with you and help you make a trip plan and learn how to take a bus. They start small, just one route from your home to a community agency, for example. And they're able to even ride alongside you and offer training at no charge so that folks develop those independent skills of riding public transit. Lextran and TARC, I've worked with both of those on this service. I have their numbers and email addresses. It's in the handout. But any of your public transit agencies, if you call them and ask about travel training, this is a service that you are entitled to. For folks that have difficulty with public transit independently. There's another service called ADA Paratransit. Whenever a public transit system is in place, so if you have a bus system in your community, then you also have ADA Paratransit. And it's a second level of accessibility. ADA Paratransit offers a higher level of door-to-door support than the integrated bus system. For some people, due to multiple disabilities, the person in the photo here is both blind and in a wheelchair, and she uses ADA Paratransit as a way to get door-to-door in her community. Sometimes folks use paratransit just for one trip. Let's just say you ride the public bus system, but there's one route because of the way the roads are, it's unsafe. Maybe there's not curb cuts. Maybe traffic is too close to the sidewalks. You can use ADA Paratransit just on some routes and not others. But I want to point out that you want to choose to ride the public bus system whenever possible. And I have a quote, "Together, not apart." So in this photo, you can see there's Arthur up in the top left, and my friend Tommy is on the right side with the blue arrow. And their signs say, "Together, not apart." So these folks were not protesting for a special segregated system. These people were protesting for one public, accessible, integrated system for all. Not a separate system, but one public transit system that meets the needs of people with disabilities. So if you use ADA Paratransit and you're interested in the travel training or learning to use the app or getting someone to ride with you until you're comfortable riding the integrated bus system, those are options that are available to you. Because the good thing about the public transit system is that it runs on a schedule. There are more routes, and you may not have the wait time with ADA Paratransit because when they're helping folks one-on-one, door-to-door, it slows the trips down, and so everybody else is waiting. And sometimes you can end up waiting quite a bit because the whole system slows down. And if you're able to ride the public transit system, you're not going to have the same delays. So that's the benefit of the integrated system. The able-bodied folks are complaining and they want the system to run fast and on time so they can get to work. And so that system runs a lot more timely than the paratransit system does.